Good morning, community. Welcome back to another Keeping It Real podcast with Dr. Anita. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, president and founder of Dr. Anita Enterprises. I am also known as the C-Suite Whisperer. I help senior executives position themselves personally in the diversity, inclusion, belonging space so that they have a different perspective when they're speaking with their employees. And today, I am so excited to have as my guest on Lived Experiences, Mr. Moes Orr. He is VP and CEO of the High School Narrative and host of the Talk the Talk with Moe podcast and current member of the Orange County Basketball Officials Association. Moe, welcome to the broadcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing phenomenal. I'm just watching you work, and this is just so impressive to see a woman of color handling business.
Well, thank you so much. You know, it's not always easy. You do several of these in a row and you get tongue tied. Thank God for competent editors.
Yeah, yeah. Look,
But
they'll make me look good. That's the most impressive part about
oh,
the job.
please. So this is what I want to get to next. So just as we were kind of warming up before we hit the record button, you had talked about how long you've been in the restaurant industry and how much you love it, but that you were going to be a lawyer. Hello? Tell me
That
about that.
that that was my path. That was
Yeah.
my path, right? My brother is a judge in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
He was an attorney, of course, and he had his own law firm. You know, him and his wife, who was a deputy DA in Portland. So, I was on that path of going to law school after I graduated from college to be a lawyer. And one day I just had this thing that made me ask him a question: is, hey, so am I going to be able to be in court every day and just argue? And he was like, no, man, that's not how it works. I'm in the office. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
then that ain't for me, man.
Yeah.
I got this personality that's this big, right? And I need to showcase it. If I got to showcase it to him, I live with him in a 2-bedroom apartment on bunk beds. He already know what I got.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fascinating because when I was coming up, I used to want to be an attorney because, like you mentioned, I like to, well, back in the day, I like to argue a lot. Now I listen more than I talk. But I love watching Perry Mason and Hamilton Berger go at it and tell each other incompetent, irrelevant, and immaterial. I just love that. But to your point, that's not the everyday workings of an attorney, right? But as a basketball official, you have to go out there and adjudicate some stuff, right?
All the time.
All the time.
The time. Yeah. So I'm actually a basketball lawyer now, just a referee lawyer, because I get to go out there in the court and adjudicate.
There you go. See, there you go. So this month's theme is March Madness on the basketball court and in the workplace. So I want to talk to you and kind of pull some things together. So I have some questions lined up. And
Sure.
the first thing I want to ask you is what is the difference, if any, do you see in the treatment of officials of color and those not of color?
Man, that's a crazy question, because a lot of times as officials, we might not look at it that way, right? And may not see the way officials are treated differently unless we're in the same space, right? Or in the same arena as 20 other officials. 5 might be Black or men of color or women of color, and the other 15 could be white or whatever other race. And if I am equally as good as a white official, and it is time to get a game that requires a high level official, I may not get that game, right? Because of a couple things. Number one, the relationship that person have built with this person that's assigned in this game might be one of which that person decides, well, I know him, and we're on the same path, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it to this official. Versus me, I have to be 5 to 10 times better than this guy, to whereas I force their hand to make. I don't ever want to be the second choice. I tell my kids that. Don't ever be the second choice. Make yourself the first choice.
Now let's explore this a little bit, because we often hear Black people in particular and people of color say, I got to be 2 times as better. And I've actually heard young Black people say, I just don't buy into that. I just don't believe that. Now, I think a lot of it has to do with the timing and the perspective based on when they were raised, because so many Black folks have done things in the past to make it possible for them to even think that that's the case. So let's talk about that.
So you ever think that uh, when you look at the times that we're in right now, right, and you talk about millennials and Gen Z and Gen X and all those things, there is a difference. And I'll give you an example. And let's go to the Super Bowl
Mm-hmm.
and the halftime show, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the artist that they had on that halftime show,
Mm-hmm.
Kendrick Lamar was on there to satisfy the millennials, right? To whereas Dr. Dre and Snoop and Mary J. Blige, that's the era that we grew up in. And Eminem, that's the era that we grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to be able to make it to whereas they have a broader audience by saying, well, put Kendrick Lamar in there. Not that he's and Kendrick Lamar is great.
Right.
I love Kendrick Lamar,
Mm-hmm.
but not that he wasn't worthy. It's just that they wanted to be able to bring a bigger base,
Mm-hmm.
which they did. We as Black men and Black women in this society and coming up in the 70s and 80s really didn't understand what our predecessors went through and what they went through before us, right? It's the same thing with now, the younger generation. They don't really understand and see an issue when we say you need to be 10 times better than the person that is in the same class as you that might be of a different race.
And to get half as much.
And get half as much. That's and that's a whole nother story when it comes to paying, and all that stuff, right? I talk about with my children, diversity, inclusion, and equity, right? And you can talk about equity and understand the ramifications of not being able to get the same things that other people that are same age, equally as educated, might be able to attain. But if you're Black, that skin color might be a reason where somebody says, nah, I think I'm gonna go with somebody I feel more comfortable with. So you have to work harder.
Let's talk about that for a minute. I was talking with a colleague of mine, and she's a recruiter, and she was working with the CEO of a company, and he says specifically, I really want a diverse candidate. So find the diverse candidates, the best of the best, not for the sake of having a diverse candidate, but to make sure that I'm, trying to put some equity in place here. Yeah. And she came back with a couple of candidates. And this was like 2 weeks after he'd said, make this a priority. She came back with a couple of candidates. He said, yeah, I was talking with my team. And the last time we had somebody in that position who was a Black guy, it kind of didn't work out. So, and he was backpedaling a little bit. She said, so I recall a past VP that you had in a position that didn't quite work out. That was a white candidate. But when you were presented with other white candidates, you didn't say, yeah, the last white candidate didn't work out. So what's the difference in your thinking now? So to your point about equity and the fact that sometimes the only thing that stands between people of color and someone else literally is the color. How is that even still happening? What do you think?
Man, just look at the way the world is right now, right? And people actually go back to, they have friends of, I have some amazing friends that are white, Asian, that I hang out with and talk to daily. With the temperature that the world is in right now, it makes you evaluate that, right? Like you look at it like, okay, are we on the same trajectory? What is, when it shouldn't be that way, right? Race is never, ever going to go away. Right? When I was in the Marine Corps, what you learn is they talk about color and, you don't see color, right? And you and I kind of had this conversation offline before that you don't see color, but they call white Marine a dark, all right, dark green and light green Marine. Those are two different shades of green, right? Even though you don't see color, it's two different shades of green, which tells you that color is never going to go away. That was their way of trying to say, hey, let's not look at the person because I have to have his back. He has to have your back to make sure that we all get home safely to our families, right? It's the same thing right now. You're gonna see color. It's about what you do with it. Our conversation offline, we talked about diversity and inclusion, and I use that example of diversity is, you asked me to the dance, right? But when I get to the dance, did you ask me to dance? That's that inclusion part. And then you even went a step further and talked about the equity part, like, yeah, but did you let me pick the music? Now,
Belonging. I
go
feel like I belong if you let me pick the music.
yeah, I'll
Yeah.
feel like I belong if I feel
Mhm.
because yeah, you can invite me to the dance and now I'm standing around and oh, you want to dance? Not to that. That's not my get down. I need to be able to two step, put some shoulders into it or something
Do
like
the
that.
cha cha.
I need to be able to get some cha cha. I might need a little Mary J. Blige or something in there. So
But and to that scenario, how many times? Okay, let's take it back to high school. You go to the dance, everybody's there, but yet you still see this group of folks over here and this group of folks over here and this group of folks over here, which speaks to the fact that yes, I'm at the dance, you invited me, but my sense of belonging comes from people who get me. And in that sense, we're hoping that it's not about seeing color, but we have to recognize that the intent of saying I don't see color has the impact that says if you don't see color, then you don't see the experiences that I've been through to get me to this place.
and I
And
think
so it's absolutely important to see my color just to understand my lived experiences.
you have to be able to see color because one thing that I've realized a long time, it's so funny. I had this joke. One of my buddies, white guy, one of my best friends, and I have a best friend. His name is DJ Black. So the white guy used to say, his name is Scott. I'm your best white friend, and he's your best black friend, just so you know, right? Because he wanted to let me know that he understood. He hasn't been through the things that I've been through, but he wanted to understand it, right? And I think that's what's so important is that you might be going through this struggle. They're not going through it personally, but they're going through it with you, right? So that they can see, man, let's try and figure out a way to help you get out of this or how we could move the needle at least a little bit, right? And I think you hear all the time, we as Black folks going through things and, the white folks saying, I'm standing here with you. I don't need you to stand here with me. I need you to push forward with me and then say something because it only gets stronger when they speak out.
I'm so glad that you made that distinction because when white people say, well, one of my best friends is Black, that is just so tone deaf unless they're coming from the perspective of your friend that says, I'm your best white friend. I'm standing with you. I can't really identify with what you're going through, but I'm in the battle with you. And that's the difference between expressing that deeper sentiment versus saying, well, yeah, I've got a Black friend who's in my circle. Do you have any idea what this even means? And I was working with a group that happened to be all males that day, majority white, and 3 people of color. And one of the males was talking about the fact that he had adopted a little Black girl when she was like 2. And he really shared some really deeply personal things with us. And one of his peers said, I knew that he had a Black daughter and I thought that was cool. But it wasn't until he just shared that story that I could begin to see what that actually means. And that's the difference.
Do you know that I have a neighbor that she has adopted a young Black girl and she has a young Black daughter. She's white. And, with everything that was going on in the world, I'm in my man cave in the garage watching the basketball game, just hanging out. And she comes out of her garage and walks over and she's like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Sure. What's going on? And she was like, I just need to know how to deal with something and how to move with this because right now as the parent, it's uncomfortable for me knowing that she is watching this and I really don't know what to say. And I said, oh, it's simple. Ask her how she feels, right?
It is.
Just ask her how she feels and listen. And the conversation will take its own direction to whereas you will then be able to kind of give her some advice and some perspective, right? Because there might be people who don't agree with you. You might walk to the market and somebody's looking at her kind of crazy, and then they see you walk up, and now they're looking at both of you guys kind of crazy, right? So you're going through that same feeling that she's feeling, living in the neighborhood that we live in, to whereas it's not as diverse as moving down the hill and in the inner cities of that. So you have to kind of understand that. And I said, I appreciate you coming to ask me, but I don't have all the answers for you because she does. right? She's going to be able to give you the answers that you're looking for and kind of help you guide her. So it's so interesting. And sometimes I feel for people that are not in the Black community and the Black race, because even if they're not prejudiced, racist, misogynistic, and all those things, people still look at them first side eye. You're like, okay, so what's this? Where this conversation gonna go? You know what I mean? So, it's hard, and it's hard on both sides. And I've been raised to be non-judgmental, and I kind of take people at face value and give them the benefit of the doubt until they treat me differently because of my skin color.
So I want to unpack a couple of things that you said, well, that came up for me when you were telling that story about your neighbor. So the first thing is, what immediately went to mind was, I'm going to go talk to the Black neighbor and let him be my personal Blackopedia. And we can't do that. People, you have to do your own homework. There is the internet. There's Google. You can Google anything you want. That being said, that's not to say don't reach out to other people for a different perspective, but at least do your homework first. All right. That's the first thing that came up to me. And the second thing that came up to me was the advice that you gave her. Ask her and just listen. When I work with C-suite executives and their direct reports, I've got a really simple acronym that I give them. Think about how you act. Approach others with an open heart. And it's less about the other person and more about removing from yourself. Well, first of all, raising the awareness and removing from yourself the assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs that you use as a filter when you deal with other people. So it's about how you approach others, connecting to understand. Ask those questions and just listen. Don't explain, don't refute, don't debate, just listen. So approach, connect, and then tap into diversity by being culturally curious, not only of individuals, but of subcultures, especially in the workforce. The subcultures of executives, of engineers, of office professionals, of salespeople, whomever is making up your overall culture. Tap into diversity by being culturally curious. So when we think about how we act, how we're approaching others with an open heart, connecting to understand, and then tapping into diversity by being culturally curious, either as individuals or subcultures. That's how we move the needle. And that doesn't change just because you're the parent of a child. Ask the question. That's the only way you're going to know. And whether you're the parent of a same race child or a different race child, it's still about asking questions, because your perspective and experience is so much different from theirs. When I was talking to Otis today, he said, he learns so much more from young people than he feels like he gives, because they've got a perspective that, of course, he's far removed from 20, 30 years, perhaps, based on the age of the mentee. And so what you shared in that story just brought up those things that I just kind of wanted to unpack for the community that's listening to us.
I love that you used two words that was three in total, but you said the Blacklopedia, which is hilarious, just so you know, and that will now be in my thesaurus pocket.
I borrowed it, so I'm just passing it along.
Hey, I love to keep passing it on. And then culturally, did you say culturally diverse?
Culturally curious, yeah.
Culturally curious, and I love that, and I think that's I'm that way, right? I want to know why things are the way they are in other cultures and kind of learn it. That's those. I love that. That was awesome.
Those are freebies just for being my guest today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So look, I want to share your perspective on being the official on the floor. And we know that sometimes the officials get like no love after the game on the way out, right? And I mentioned my monologue, depending on how contentious some of the calls were, I don't even let folks know that I'm with Emmanuel. I'm kind of walking behind him, right? Not that I don't love my husband, but So my question for you is, as an official, when you're making those calls after the game, do you ever wonder, were people like hating on me because I'm black and they don't think I know what I'm doing, or are they hating on me just because they didn't like the call?
Man, that's an interesting question. I've never thought of it. I consider myself to be a good official, and I just had a state playoff game, and me and an official are driving to San Diego, and to work this game. And I'm talking about how I pride myself on being a communicator, right, with coaches and players and the table that's taking down the administrative stuff and the other official. And I related to, I said, some of the best officials that I know are typically leaders in their workspace or something, because it's about dealing with people, right? And as far as the fans that might be displeasured by a call or something, I think it takes a couple of things, right? For an official, the confidence that an official displays throughout the course of a basketball game will kind of shut some of that stuff down. You might be displeasured, but you'll sit there and think, man, okay, so maybe he saw something totally different than I saw, because he's right there.
Right.
One of the things I tell a coach, if I'm the lead official on the game and they say, Mo, you have to help him with that. How can he not see that? And I turn to the coach and say, I trust him. He's standing right in front of the play. My angle is totally different. It might be just like yours, and he sees something that I cannot see.
Perspective.
Right? It's all about perspective. And I feel that I've never looked at it and thought that the color of my skin played a factor in why they don't like me. I think the color of that shirt that makes them look at you a little differently. And I hope, and trust me, I know that there might be places where, Black officials walk into the gym and they like, oh my God.
Right.
I'll tell you something about some Black officials. All the adversity that we have gone through in our life, and now I'm on the basketball court, I'm going to talk about my mama. Black mamas ain't no joke. The way I used to be disciplined back in the day and the way that she held me accountable, there's nobody in the world that could match that, right? Yeah. So when I walk into a gym and they talking, I'm like, man,
that ain't nothing.
That ain't nothing to me. You know what I'm saying? Let me bring my mama up in here, and you know what I'm saying? That'll affect me more than anything. So I don't know. I think it probably happens out there, but I think that if an official goes into a game and is confident and prepared, because we always talk about nervousness is act of not being prepared for something that you are going to do. The anxiousness, if you look at the word anxious, it's I look at it in a positive way and say I use the word excitement instead of the anxious part. I'm excited for this game to get started. I'm glad I'm here to help adjudicate things that might go wrong. And I'll only do that when you allow me to, because you did something that was illegal or something like that. Otherwise, I'm just gonna run up and down the court for an hour and 20 minutes, not blow my whistle, and hang out. That's
get a little exercise, a little bit of change in the pocket. I love how you said it probably has less to do with your color and more to do with this black and white, which is, I put this on in your honor. I'm trying to.
That. I could tell, just so I could tell.
So look, let me ask you this really quickly, going back to the halftime and what's going on in the NFL and the lack of diversity at the ranks of the NFL head coaches. Do you see any of that, or what similarities can you draw between that and head coaches in basketball?
Ooh, that's a good one, because that and it's not just basketball, right? It could be football in high school. And I live in Orange County, right? In Orange County, California.
We both do. Yeah.
We do, right? And I have a friend who is a coach. He was a coach first, right, in high school for football. And when you looked across the ranks of some of these high schools in Orange County, there's not a lot of Black head coaches, right? It's the same thing with the NFL. 75%, and don't quote me as a statistician, but that's something that I've heard. 75% of the players in the NFL are Black, right? A little bit more than 80% in the NBA are Black that is playing this game and bringing millions and billions of dollars to these owners, right? And yet we'll go back to what we talked about earlier, being comfortable and having some commonality with these millionaires that are making decisions on who's going to lead my team. You can only be comfortable with the people that you are surrounding yourself with. And if you don't put them in this circle to whereas you can get to know them on a different level, then your decision is still going to be white. I didn't say the right decision. I said the white decision. Because now you're able to pick this individual based off of similarities, comfortability, and I see their track record. I don't understand how 32 teams and you got one black head coach, Mike Tomlin for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm a Raider fan, just so you know, and I don't like the Steelers, but
I'm sorry, I'm a Steeler fan, so I'm glad we're friends on a different level because I'm Steelers all
day. But I say that to say he wasn't their first choice in the beginning. And I don't know, 18 years later, he's still there. You know what I'm saying? And I think that sometimes you got to make a choice in the decision, because you said earlier that CEO or VP who said, find me somebody that's diverse, and they come back and say, well, the last time I had a black person in that position, things didn't go well. My next question to him would have been, how many VPs have you had in that position? Cool, 20. Apparently 19 things didn't go right with that one white person. You might want to try something different, right?
Wow.
And it might be that black person who might change that.
Okay. All right. Well,
just saying.
I'm just saying. So look, so what you just said reminds me that I would be remiss if I didn't give the Raiders a little bit of love. And I was having this conversation with my cousin, who is so much a Raiders fan. She was just so excited when they built the stadium out there in Vegas. She never misses a game, right? And she said, and I might be misquoting my facts, so you help me out, that Al Davis was the first to have a black head coach. That Al Davis was also one of the first to put a woman in the front office. And there were some other things that Al Davis had done first. So in addition to being controversial and people just not liking Al Davis, he also did some out of the box thinking back in the day when people just weren't doing that. So for that, I'll give the Raiders some love. But now I want to go and talk about something that one of my clients, a white male, brought to me. When I work with the C-suite executives, I have them go out and find some DIB, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, ABCs, awareness building content. And one gentleman came back to me and he gave me an article about the NFL and the differences in the success rates and length of time it comes to be successful for black quarterbacks versus white quarterbacks. And in this article, the article itself pointed out the fact that white quarterbacks are automatically giving mentoring and coaching that black quarterbacks don't necessarily get right off the bat. And so were it not for the raw talent, they wouldn't be as far along as they are. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, I think I think a lot of times when, and I watched the combine and, you know, all that stuff that comes along with that. But I think what they do is relate quarterback to high IQ. So for people to think that black people can't take a playbook, this playbook that they have, and kind of break down the defensive schemes that are being run against them are a little bit misled, right? Just so you know, I'm not a quarterback, but I can see somebody scheming on me, you know what I'm saying, miles away. Cool, not going to deal with this dude because he a little suspect, right? It's kind of the same thing. And you talked about the raw talent. When Lamar Jackson was coming out of college, and it can go as far back as Randall Cunningham.
I was just thinking Randall Cunningham.
Williams for Washington Redskins. It can go back as far as all those guys and those players, to whereas people didn't want to give them a shot because they didn't think they were smart enough to understand and then be able to make those adjustments. So I think a lot of times they look at Tom Brady, right? If you talk about Tom Brady, he went to Michigan. He was, 6th round pick. And then during that same draft, you have somebody like Michael Vick, who is athletic, so athletic, and was just a raw talent out there. But they still didn't think, even after all that winning, they still didn't think he could dissect a defense like Tom Brady. But he could run, he can get away from, defenders and stuff like that. And I think that's why he remained successful.
Mm-hmm.
So if even today, if they were in their prime and they both were getting traded and one team was looking at both of them, they still would select Tom Brady. Slow, slow white guy, but is a winner just like Michael Vick was a winner. You know what I mean?
Which goes back to something that Black people often say amongst themselves. Got to work twice as hard to get half as much. I mean, you just said, even with a proven track record of Michael Vick, just because it showed up differently, you're still making the numbers. So why are you still, having this discussion about worthiness? Mm-hmm. Which brings me to another point. Now, we know that, well, maybe some people don't know, that Byron Allen is putting in a bid for an NFL team, and I hope he gets it. Mm-hmm. Why is it that Michael Jordan is the only one that owns an NBA team? And how do we even, not we, you and I, but when do we get to the point where it's not uncommon for Black owners of teams, football, basketball, baseball, whomever?
Look how big of a name you have to be when you're Black to own a part of a team.
And I'm not even sure how many people even know who Byron Allen is. Byron Allen's been around for a while and started out as a comedian. He now owns the Weather Channel, and who knows what else he owns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he's smart, right? You got to take that.
Right.
So let's kind of dissect this a little bit. So you talk about Michael Jordan. Hello, everybody knows Michael. I was laying down and watching The Last Dance again for the 250th time. And my son, who is 7, he knows who Michael Jordan is. But of course, Steph Curry is still the man because he said, yeah, but he don't play anymore, and he didn't even want to play baseball. Right. I'm like, how do you know that? Mm-hmm. Because it's Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is pretty much, you could say McDonald's and Michael Jordan, and everybody in the world know who you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Magic Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Black businesses, from restaurants to movie theaters, and so many other things that he do, which is, and still always giving back to the community, just so you know. Mm-hmm. He was part owner of the Lakers. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. He is part owner of the Dodgers. Huge deal. Mm-hmm. Dwayne Wade, in a place like Utah, he is world known, right? His name is world recognized, right? Jay-Z's, the Beyonce, for us to be able to do it, everybody has to know who you are. Mm. For them to be able to do it, that owner needs to know who you are. Who am I selling it to? Am I selling it to? Okay, right? You just have to have the means to be able to do it, because nobody's going to care, because you're not going to be the face of that franchise at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Those Black men will be the face of that franchise. Mm-hmm. That'll be the reason players go, right? Oh, who's that? Oh, Michael Jordan? Oh, I'll go play for Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Who's that? Nobody wants to go play in Utah. Some people will go to Utah because of Dwayne Wade's relationship and leadership that he has in there. So for them, it's the means. For us, it's the name. I think that's what it boils down to.
I love the perspective that you're bringing. Very, very different perspectives. I'll be interested to see, what some of our community listeners are thinking as they're watching us. So I want to talk about the high school narrative and talk to Mo. Tell us about those.
Man, let me talk to you. So number one, I have a podcast called Talk with Moe Orr. I talk about all kinds of things, and I bring on a lot of different guests from NBA basketball officials, from actors. Omid Atani, who is on The Mandalorian, was a college friend of mine. Okay. Trevor Picnic, who was with O-Town, the boy band. But most importantly, I talk to kids that have been struggling with addiction or anxiety and depression, and parents of those kids to try to find better ways to help and assist them through the trying times that they've been going through. And we at the High School Narrative is a positive platform for kids and families to be able to see a lot of positive things going on within the high school community that you just couldn't see. So if you don't live in New York, you're not going to know what's going on in those schools in New York, right? And if you don't live in California, you're not going to be able to know what's going on in those schools. So we do a lot of hype videos. You can just go to thsn.app and download this, a free app. And I have a ton of content on there for with podcasts and stuff like that. I know Denny Lennon, who is heavily into the volleyball community. He's also on there. And we have a young lady is basically talking with Sam, and she is also doing the podcast that we have content on there, which is also to help young kids and young adolescent adults that seek to find some help with going through depression and drug addiction and, all those things that kids don't want to talk about. We just want them to see that there's more than them going through it. And hopefully, saving one life is a big start to that. So that's what we do there on the High School Narrative.
Congratulations. Some amazing work. Wow. One last thing I want to ask you about that we didn't cover. How's the business going? When are you going to have like a something in the yard so we can swing by and get some of that good,
Come on, we talking about Dad's Kitchen. You know what I'm saying? You can come out there and get some of that nice barbecue, some little catfish, some wings that we got going on. Right now we are, it's going well. We are very busy. We're actually working on a 400, I'm going to tell you, it started off with 450 people for Linwood High School school district, and now it's made its way up to 1,000 people. It's for their all their winter sports. They're kind of finishing all that stuff up, and spring sports, they're putting all of them together. It's their banquet. So now it's about 1,000 people. So just so you know, when I'm finished here, it's back to work. Got to go do some shopping and work on some more recipes and stuff like that. But yeah, dadskitchen.org. We're out there putting in that work.
dadskitchen.org. So you cater for events, but you also, like, if I wanted you to come like do a birthday party, would you do that too?
Oh, come on. I'll be in your backyard so quick. Got that firework and everything. Some burgers flipping, some barbecue, we smoked meat. We do all that. We come out there and, we'll do pop-ups in the community just to help continue to get our name out there and, give some people some barbecue. In Orange County, you can't get that Southern home cooked food that you're looking for sometimes. But I'm hiding in the crevices, And
it is some good stuff. Don't hide. Dad's Kitchen. How do we find you again?
You can go to Dad's Kitchen 2021 EST.
Right. Okay. Just want to make sure we don't want you hiding out anymore. It's good stuff. Mo, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today on Lived Experiences. You shared so much and so many different aspects and perspectives of your lived experience. And that is what this program is about. Community. I want you to contribute to the dialogue. So if you've got any potential guest speakers that have an amazing lived experience that you think the rest of the community would benefit from, please reach out. Send an email to jazzy@dranita.com. Remember, you got to spell it out, doctoranita.com. For more about my services and resources, please find me on my website at www.doctoranita.com. And if you want to hear this podcast or any from the past, once you hit the landing page, you want to go to the button at the middle at the top that says Keeping It Real Podcast. Also, we are found on several different podcast players, so subscribe, review, like, and give me some feedback. I want to present content that's going to be helpful to you. Until the next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.